So you've said that individual humans are multi-layered, susceptible to
Hmm.
signals and waves and multiple strata, the physical, the biological, social, cultural, intellectual. So sort of going along these lines, can you describe the layers of the cake that is a human being
Hmm.
and maybe the human collective, human society?
So I'm just stealing wholesale here from Robert Pirsig, who is the author of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And in his follow-on book, his sequel to it called Lila, he goes into this in a little bit more detail. But it's a crude approach to thinking about people, but I think it's still an advancement over traditional subject-object metaphysics, where we look at people as a dualist would say, well, is your mind, your consciousness, is that just merely the matter that's in your brain, or is there something kind of more beyond that? And they would say, yes, there's a soul, sort of ineffable soul beyond just merely the physical body, right? And I'm not one of those people, right? I think that we don't have to draw a line between are things only this or only that. Collectives of things can emerge structures and patterns that are just as real as the underlying pieces, but they're transcendent, but they're still of the underlying pieces. So your body is this way. I mean, we just know physically you consist of atoms and whatnot, and then the atoms are arranged into molecules, which then arrange into certain kinds of structures that seem to have a homeostasis to them. We call them cells, and those cells form, sort of biological structures.
Mhm.
Those biological structures give your body its physical ability and its biological ability to consume energy and to maintain homeostasis. But humans are social animals. I mean, a human by themselves is not very long for the world. So we also, part of our biology is wired to connect to other people, to, from the mirror neurons to our language centers and all these other things. So we are intrinsically, there's a part of us that wants to be part of a thing. If we're around other people, not saying a word, but they're just up and down, jumping and dancing, laughing, we're going to feel better. Right. And there was no exchange of physical anything. They didn't give us like 5 atoms of happiness. Right. But there's an induction in our own sense of self that is at that social level. And then beyond that, Pirsig puts the intellectual level kind of one level higher than social. I think they're actually more intertwined than that. But the intellectual level is the level of pure ideas, that you are a vessel for memes, you're a vessel for philosophies. You will conduct yourself in a particular way. I mean, I think part of this is, if we think about it from a physics perspective, you're not, there's the joke that physicists like to approximate things. And we'll say, well, approximate a spherical cow, right? You're not a spherical cow. You're not a spherical human. You're a messy human. And we can't even say what the dynamics of your emotion will be unless we analyze all 4 of these layers, right? If you're Muslim at a certain time of day, guess what? You're going to be on the ground kneeling and praying, right? And that has nothing to do with your biological need to get on the ground or physics of gravity. It is an intellectual drive that you have. It's a cultural phenomenon and an intellectual belief that you carry. So that's what the 4-layered stack is all about. It's that a person is not only one of these things; they're all of these things at the same time. It's a superposition of dynamics that run through us that make us who we are.
So no layers special.
Not so much no layer special. Each layer is just different. But we are, but
Each layer gets the participation trophy.
each layer is a part of what you are. You are a layer cake, right, of all these things. And if we try to deny, right, so many philosophies do try to deny the reality of some of these things, right? Some people will say, well, we're only atoms. Well, we're not only atoms, because there's a lot of other things that are only atoms. I can reduce a human being to a bunch of soup, and they're not the same thing, even though it's the same atoms.
Mhm.
So I think the order and the patterns that emerge within humans, to understand, to really think about what a next generation philosophy would look like, that would allow us to reason about extending humans into the digital realm,
Mhm.
or to interact with autonomous intelligences that are not biological in nature. We really need to appreciate what human beings actually are
Mhm.
is the superposition of these different layers.
You mentioned consciousness. Are each of these layers of cake conscious? Is consciousness a particular quality of one of the layers? Is there like a spike if you have a consciousness detector at these layers?
Mm-hmm.
Or is something that just permeates all of these layers and just takes different form?
I believe what humans experience as consciousness is something that sits on a gradient scale of a general principle in the universe that seems to look for order and reach for order when there's an excess of energy. it would be odd to say a proton is alive, right? It'd be odd to say like this particular atom or molecule of hydrogen gas is alive. But there's certainly something we can make assemblages of these things that have autopoietic aspects to them, that will create structures, that will, crystalline solids will form very interesting and beautiful structures. This gets kind of into weird mathematical territories. We start thinking about Penrose and Game of Life stuff, about the generativity and math itself, like the hyperreal numbers, things like that. But without going down that rabbit hole, I would say that there seems to be a tendency in the world that when there is excess energy, things will structure and pattern themselves. And they will then actually furthermore try to create an environment that furthers their continued stability. It's the concept of externalized extended phenotype or niche construction. So this is ultimately what leads to certain kinds of amino acids forming certain kinds of structures and so on and so forth until you get the ladder of life. So what we experience as consciousness, no, I don't think cells are conscious at that level. But is there something beyond mere equilibrium state biology and chemistry and biochemistry that drives what makes things work? I think there is. So Adrian Bajan has his constructal law. There's other things you look at when you look at the life sciences and you look at any kind of statistical physics and statistical mechanics. When you look at things far out of equilibrium, when you have excess energy, what happens then? Life doesn't just make a hotter soup. It starts making structure. There's something there.